Good morning, all of you. Welcome back to today's analysis session for 2nd July 2023. So let's start with important topics from the Hindu newspaper first. So water mission may miss the 2024 target that we have, and only 3 out of the 4 rural households are likely to have the drinking water tap connections by 2024, and work has not even begun in 5% of the homes. So we had this initiative of Har Ghar Jal initiative, basically providing drinking tap water to every household by 2024 in the rural households. All the rural households had to be covered with the portable water connections, and this was a flagship scheme under the Jal Jeevan mission. But this is likely to fall short of its target. So only 75% of the village homes, they are likely to have the taps delivering drinking water. So officials say that there were a lot of challenges in the forms of pandemic, dearth of qualified manpower in the state, scale of the exercise. That was again a big challenge in itself. And then state specific issues and even the ongoing Russia-Ukraine war. It meant that the project only picked up speed in the several states in 2022. So with new date to fix the boundaries, the census is unlikely before the polls. So deadline to freeze the administrative boundaries of the districts, tehsils and towns, among others, has been extended till December 31st, ruling out the census exercise before 2024 Lok Sabha elections. So the designated census exercise that was to be conducted in 2021, it was postponed indefinitely initially because of COVID-19, and the latest order does not specify any reason. So the Office of Registrar General of India issued an order last week stating the date of freezing of the boundaries for the ensuing census has been extended and will now be with effect from 1st of January 2024. So the next census, it will be the first digital census giving citizens the opportunity to self-enumerate. So you'll be having this option, and census is now carried out in 2 phases. So the first one is the house listing and housing census, and then the population enumeration phase, which typically takes around 11 months. And the national population register that is to be updated with the first phase of the census. So both the phases were to be concluded by 5th of March 2021. So here what is important is you can find out about the difference between NPR and the census. And then India, this is an important fact that India has conducted census every 10 years since 1881. So you can find out about when was the first official census carried out. Did we carry out any census before 1881 or not? So exercise, it was not old. It was not even halted even during World War II also, but it had to be postponed in 2020 because of COVID pandemic. So around 30 lakh government officials, they will be involved in this whole census exercise. So Assam school farms fish, fruits for self-sufficient midday meals. So this can be the next step, basically kitchen farming being done in schools. So by venturing out to the farming vegetables, fruits, mushrooms, and fish, this school has found an answer to lacking nutrition parameters in the Kokrajhar district. So this can be taken up as a case study. So efforts to eat right. So we see the Deputy Commissioner of the Kokrajhar said that the district had been lacking in terms of the nutrition parameters. However, with the convergence of efforts of the departments, institutions, and community, we have seen awareness and efforts to eat right over the last couple of years. So it is one of the Kokrajhar 16 schools that have added mushrooms to their Nutri gardens. So these are basically called Nutri gardens being cultivated and taken care of in the school premises. And this has taken the mission to a different level, and locals, they attribute its uniqueness to the passion with which the principal and the chowkidar, you can see how the role of every person is very important in order to make this initiative successful. They pursued farming within the premises besides doing their regular jobs. So this is an important case study for us. So tribal people, they are opposed to the Uniform Civil Code and they are planning for protest. So there are more than 700 recognized tribes in India, and all of whom have their own set of customary laws and practices governing their aspects of civil and sometimes even criminal disputes. So that is why they are opposing the UCC, because one, like obviously once it becomes effective and it is implemented, so they would have to give up their customs, their traditions, which they had followed since ages, and they will have to abide with the UCC. So UCC, once again, it has been centered around whether religious minorities, they can continue following their respective personal laws or not. So this is one thing which needs to be taken into account when we're talking about formulation of the UCC. So whether we can go ahead with this exception or not is the case. Then here we can see that the constitutional provision under the sixth schedule, articles 371A through article 371I, or they have been recognized through the judicial decisions. So for instance, when we take up article 371A of the constitution, it mandates that no act of parliament shall be applicable to Nagaland with respect to the religious or the social practices of Nagas, Naga customary law and procedure, administration, and decisions according to the Naga customary law would be taken in terms of ownership and transfer of land and its resources unless allowed by the legislature of the state. So we are having some exceptions in order to, assimilate the tribal communities. So let's see that how the case would be in case of the Uniform Civil Code. So how the use of robotics in case of ensuring the internal security, that is an important thing in a new emerging area, be it the drone technology or other emerging technologies, which can be a threat to internal security. So supplementary charge sheet here, we are seeing that says 5 among 9 suspects, they had technology background, and foreign-based Islamic State handler had funded the accused through cryptocurrencies to carry out the terror strikes. So you can see definitely the potential of misusage do exist in terms of the technology or the cryptocurrencies. So in this picture, you can see a wooden carving of Lord Vishnu, which was unveiled in Hyderabad by the Vice President of India. So this is one of the largest wooden carving of Lord Vishnu in Hyderabad, and said that it's important to preserve the art forms of India. So this topic is obviously it's important in itself, and 700-year-old log of the teakwood has been turned into a sculpture of Lord Vishnu reclining on a boiled snake by artists from Myanmar and India. So the push for the Uniform Civil Code, it turns the spotlight on Supreme Court's query on religious freedom. So the renewed push for the UCC, which many communities they perceive as an encroachment into the personal laws and religious rights, is underway even as we see the nine-judge bench of the Supreme Court is yet to decide the ambit and the scope of religious freedom itself. So it has been 3 years since the Constitution Bench of Supreme Court framed 7 questions of law linked to the religious freedom, rights, and practices in the Subjumala case. So still we're waiting for the final verdict. And the first of the 7 questions is, what is the scope and ambit of the right to freedom of religion under Article 25? So reference in the case is still pending and questions they remain unanswered by the court. So we are waiting for the final judgment and the verdict on these 7 questions. So India adds 664 animal species to its fauna database and 339 taxa to its flora. So in 2022, the biggest number of discoveries of animals and plants were from Kerala, which contributes to 14% of the new species and new records. So conservation work is critical to protect diversity of the country. So in this picture, you can see Macaca salai. So we are looking clockwise. So you have the names of different species that were found in 2022. So Zoological Survey of India, their role is important here. So we are having the names mentioned of all the species that were discovered in 2022, and the highest were from Kerala, and then Kerala was like followed by Karnataka, Tamil Nadu. So you can see the southern states are basically dominating this list. Coming to the world page, so in Kabul, Taliban said Biden acknowledged the reality, but Al Qaeda and about Al Qaeda in Kabul. So Afghanistan's Taliban government seized on an off-the-cut remark by the US President Joe Biden to underscore their claim that there was no Al Qaeda threat in the country. So Mr. Biden was quoted saying that, do you remember what I said about Afghanistan? I said Al Qaeda would not be there. I said we'd get help from the Taliban. So that's the role of US in Afghanistan. And then finally it withdrew from there, how like things changed after that, and then what were the repercussions for the entire world and the countries bordering Afghanistan. So what is data scrapping? Here we are seeing that Musk, he introduces limit to viewing the tweets in a bid to fix this data scrapping issue. So here limits have been imposed to address extreme levels of data scrapping and system manipulation. So verified accounts are temporarily limited to reading 6,000 posts a day, adding that the unverified accounts and new unverified accounts, they are limited to read only 600 posts in a day and 300 posts per day respectively. So let's see what are the important topics from science today. So Martian gullies, they have formed by melting water ice. So according to simulations of the red planet's past climate and axial tilt, gullies which are observed on Mars' surface, they could have formed by melting water ice during periods of high obliquity. So since we are having missions in order to find out whether like do we have water on planets or not. So this is basically a geographical phenomena which you can see these gullies or these lines. So these are called gullies and it leads after drying up of water basically. So it is being believed that it is because of the drying of the water ice. So the intensity of extreme rainfall estimated to increase by 15%. So climate warming is causing a decrease in the snowfall and increase in rainfall at high altitudes in northern hemisphere. So intensity and frequency of extreme precipitation events is expected to increase as global warming continues to affect the planet. And of particular concern is the extremes in the rainfall, which often cause more damage than similar snowfall events due to their instantaneous runoff, increasing the risk of floods, which can cause infrastructure damage and landslides. So we need to be fully prepared in order to deal with such kind of situations, obviously, because these plans would also be varying from region to region. It would be different for an hilly area, different for the plains. So preparedness is very important. So when we talk about the cardiac events in COVID rediscovered patients, so the primary symptoms of the COVID-19 infections, they are respiratory, but concerns about the involvement of other organs such as the heart have been repeatedly raised throughout these years. So in addition to these heart-related complications occurring during the course of the infection, an increase in the frequency of the cardiovascular events has also been noted for several months. So countries like Japan, Norway, Australia, they have observed excess mortality during the relatively benign Omicron variant, and that was a significant portion of which is attributed to such events. So alongside the traditional risk factors like tobacco use, high cholesterol, COVID-19 has also been recognized as an additional risk factor for cardiovascular disease. So the heart, which is an organ that works continuously without a break in a person's lifetime, it could suffer from problems occurring in its muscle, blood vessels, or the nervous system. So what is important is that how we can then take care of our health of our heart post the pandemic, how we need to change our lifestyle, how our eating habits needs to change. So all these areas, they're extremely important. So coming to the FAQ page, the first article is talking about what is China's new law on their foreign relations. So will it tighten President Xi Jinping's control over the foreign policy? What are the political and economic ramifications of it? Or is it aimed at formulating a legal response to the Western sanctions on China? And does it talk about lending aid to the foreign countries or not? So these are some of the questions that we'll be delving into in this article. So what is actually the new law about? So it involves the foreign affairs, and as the very first article puts it, it was drafted to safeguard China's sovereignty, national security, and development interests. That's very obvious. And the legal system concerning the foreign affairs still has some shortcomings and gaps exist in the laws safeguarding the national sovereignty, security, and the development interest. So officials said that speeding up the building of the legal system concerning the foreign affairs will help China more effectively to deal with the risks and the challenges. So the broader aim of the law appears to it appears to be aimed at giving a legal stamp to many of the key objectives of Chinese foreign policy under Mr. Xi and to make it a punishable offense if individuals or organizations they were deemed to act against those objectives. So what will be the impact on the foreign policy because of this law? So centralization, we are seeing the centralization of the Chinese foreign policy under Mr. Z. It now has a legal stamp, and challenging it may be deemed as violation of the Chinese laws. So this has been basically, it can lead to obviously the expected impacts. And the law specifically mentions several key initiatives which have been championed by Mr. Z, like the Belt and Road Initiative, the Global Development Initiative, the Global Security Initiative. So you can find out some more details about these three initiatives. And the law also emphasizes on sovereignty and security as being at the heart of the Chinese foreign policy. So many observers, they say that for the first time in the reform era, prioritized security over development and opening up a key change that will likely have long-term political and economic ramifications. So the law says that China has the right to take, as called for, measures to counter or take restrictive measures against acts that endanger its sovereignty, national security, and development interests in violation of the international law or fundamental norms governing international relations. So basically, it is, we can see the nature that it has been more centralized. So this law clearly opposes all hegemonism and the power politics and is against any unilateral protectionism and bullying acts towards China. So what does this new law mean for India? This is an important area for us to understand. So with the border law adopted in 2021, emphasis of security, sovereignty, territorial integrity, they are key tenets of the Chinese foreign policy. And these coincide with the border dispute returning to the center of India-China relations. So Indian experts, they saw the border law as essentially looking to formalize China's moves along the line of actual control, with transgressions of April 2020 appending both the bilateral relations and decades-old mechanisms aimed at carefully managing the boundary dispute. So the two laws, they also coincide with the territorial disputes being framed by Beijing as matters of national sovereignty rather than issues to be negotiated by two sides. So Article 6 of the new law says that all the state institutions, armed forces, political parties, so they have the responsibility and obligations to safeguard China's sovereignty. So Article 31 may have a potential bearing on the signing of the agreements to resolve the disputes, as it declares implementation and application of treaties and agreements. It will not undermine the sovereignty of the state. Article 17 says that the main aim of the conduct of foreign relations is to uphold its systems of socialism with the Chinese characteristics, safeguard the sovereignty, unification, territorial integrity. So these are like different articles, part of the new law. So another article which will be scrutinized particularly by Indian and foreign companies operating within China is Article 8. So it declares that any organization or individual who commits the acts that are detrimental to China's national interest in violation of this law and other applicable laws in the course of engaging in international exchanges shall be held accountable by the law. So basically, rethinking would be done on several dimensions as per the different articles. Then will signing the Artemis Accords benefit India or not? So if India wants to make the most of the accords, what does it need to do? Will ISRO have to hike its space budget or not? So on 21st June, we saw that India became the 27th signatory to the Artemis Accords, which is a set of non-binding guidelines that underpin the Artemis program, which is a US-led project to return humans to the moon permanently. So why do the accords matter? So this is a program which includes plans for a base on the lunar surface, multiple spacecraft to ferry humans and cargo there, and orbiting space station and constellation satellites to help with navigation and communication. So the first Artemis crewed mission to the moon's surface is likely in 2026. So it resembles a Chinese-Russian plan for an international lunar research station. So for leaders in US and China, lunar exploration embodies all that is good about their countries, even as they are locked in a bitter rivalry. So it supports America-friendly interpretations of space law, and in turn, the member states, they get to participate in the Artemis program. So where do the Accords fit in the space law? So modern space law is erected on 4 international agreements that cover issues like peaceful use of space, registration, and liability. So they were struck between 1967 and 1976 at the time of the first space race and the Cold War detente. So the Accords principles, they are consonant with these agreements. And fifth treaty, the Moon Agreement, was introduced in 1979, but neither the US nor the Soviet Union they signed it. But India signed it, but we didn't ratify it. So one of the provisions of these accords, it even allows the actors to extract and utilize the space resources. So even that can be done. So this could be at odds with the Moon Agreement, which is there, which asks for gains from the commercial exploitation, the lunar resources to be distributed. So why didn't India sign the accords earlier? So it was drafted in 2020, just as India was opening up its own space sector to the private players while being a signatory to the Moon Agreement may have initially given India pause. The cases of Australia and France, they're also reassuring. So India's own attitude has also evolved with its new space policy, allowing the private players to mine any space resource. And there's also a noticeable shift in India's diplomatic practices also. So previously, diplomats in Delhi, they were likely concerned that these accords, they are an informal set of norms rather than a legally binding instrument. So India has historically preferred the latter because it believes laws foster better compliance. So that was one of the reasons why we didn't sign it back then. And India, it has now accepted a set of US-led norms that suggest a change in our thinking. So furthermore, the dramatic developments of the last 3 years have made it clear that divisions between US and China are too deep for them to agree on a complex new international law on the moon until their ties improve. So finally, the ties between India and the US, they have been on an upswing, and there is less hesitation in Delhi about joining these America-inspired international effort. So what must India do? So signing this alone, it has no financial implications for India, but if the country wants to be a major player in the Artemis program, so ISRO will need a significant hike in its annual budget, which stands at about rupees 12,500 crores this year. So at present, the ISRO's lunar exploration program, that is impressive, but it's modest. So the Chandrayaan-3 mission is also scheduled to make India's first soft landing on the moon in the next few weeks in July. So it may also take 3 years or more before India independently sends humans into space as part of the Gaganyaan project. So we must overcome the domestic resistance to collaboration with the other space agencies and enable the private sector to work with other Artemis members and develop legislation that encourages space activities. So these can be the few things which India can do. So why are the Indian drug makers under the lens? So this is again an important topic, a hot topic of debate. What are the complaints and what are the regulatory processes for manufacturing, quality control and checks? What is the role of the Central Drugs Standard Control Organization? What does India need to do to redeem its reputation in the global pharma industry? So this can be taken as a case study, which is again important for GS4 ethics paper. So since October last year, Indian pharma companies, they have been under constant international scrutiny for exporting allegedly contaminated drugs, which have led to deaths of children. So recently, Nigeria raised the red flag on 2 oral drugs. Cameroon too sounded an alarm over another cough syrup, which was made by India. Then we saw Sri Lanka called out 2 drugs manufactured in India, linking them to adverse reactions. And in the latest move, Gambia has declared that from 1st July, it is running strict quality control checks on all pharma products shipped into the country before they leave Indian shores. So there are so many countries which are raising the same question about the quality of the Indian drugs. So has India launched a probe against the companies who are involved in this whole case? So soon after, the Gambia had reported the deaths of at least 70 children related to a contaminated cough syrup, which was made in India. We like reports from Uzbekistan for at least 18 children dying. So there was basically, it is believed the cough syrups they had the diethylene glycol mixed in it. So the pharma company, which is Marion Biotech's license, that was cancelled by the national watchdog, and the CDSU, basically, that is the drugs regulator in India. But the Ministry of Health and Family Welfare, it has not answered any question on the probe that was launched. So latest in line, they are the alerts from Sri Lanka, where patients they are reported to have died after being administered anesthetic drugs made in India. And then we had the case of eye medication, which were exported to US. So only this was a step that the license of this company that was cancelled, but we are not having the results of the probe that was launched against them. So what has led to this loss of confidence? So while Gambia has appointed Mumbai-based control labs to independently assess the manufacturing plants and the drug samples of Indian exporters. So it is being learned that it is not just the first such African country to have a checking system in place. Even Mozambique, it has been checking samples from all the batches of the medicines. So basically, there obviously the fear increases because there's nothing important than a human life, and it cannot be tolerated at all. So they are taking all possible steps in order to ensure that they are of good quality before they are exported to the respective countries. So Nigeria, it is also become more careful. Not only it like it's all the pharmaceutical samples checked, it is also mandated samples from all the batches of chemicals, food, medical devices, cosmetics. They be checked by an independent assessor. So these are some of the changes which these countries they are taking, and why the regulators they are failing to take the action against the faulty manufacturing practices. So we are having a regulator, but despite that, why we are failing at the quality control? So the issue of the contaminated cough syrup batches seeping into the supply chain and finding their way to pediatric patients is not only limited to exports, but India has also recorded at least 5 major DEG poisoning events since 1972, killing at least 84 children. So these are not just restricted to the countries to which we are exporting. The same thing has also happened in India as well. So ideally, when a manufacturer it is found to be violating the law, specifically in cases where there is threat to life or alleged deaths, a criminal prosecution, the persons who are responsible for manufacturing and marketing, it should be launched. So instead of doing that, the Ministry of CDSU and the state regulators, they keep passing the buck. So under India's convoluted drug regulatory law, the center is responsible for imports and approving new drugs based on safety and efficacy of the data. But the licensing and the prosecutions of these pharma companies is responsibility of state governments. So these responsibilities, they needs to be, all of that needs to be fulfilled effectively and they need to be implemented. So why are the pharma companies not being punished? So merely suspending or canceling their manufacturing license is not enough. So under the Drugs and the Cosmetics Act that we have, manufacturers not adhering to the good manufacturing practices, they can be subjected to a maximum punishment of imprisonment for life. So even when the prosecutions they are filed, the cases move at a snail's pace in the court. So we need timely justice, and here we also have the case study, an example from Andhra Pradesh, where 54 judgments and cases filed against the pharma companies, and the state was able to secure convictions in only 8 cases. So poor conviction rate is another challenge. And the drug inspectors, including the shoddy paperwork which exists, failure to seize then record its condition of shortage and label the samples properly. So also the failure to complete the testing process the samples before its expiry date. So things are not, happening as they should at the ground level. So it does not help basically that CDSO is perennially reeling under a shortage of drug inspectors, but 2019 report titled Drug Regulation in India, the Working and Performance CDSO, it was basically said that while there ought to be one drug inspector for every 50 manufacturing units and 200 pharmacists, there were vacancies in most of the states waiting to be filled. So this needs to be ensured. So health experts, they say that if India wants to redeem its reputation, it will have to tighten the screws by ensuring robust pharma inspections, make sure that any slip up by manufacturers is reported and it is prosecuted on timely basis. Coming to the business page, so we're not having any like broad article except this GST mopper price is 12% to rupees 1.61 lakh crore rupees in June. So this is there, we can mention this as one of the points about the success of GST. So whether it is common consumer, whether it is state government, a matter of tax buoyancy, whether it is making digital and simpler. So GST stands out as an example. So with the launch of special drive for chasing the fake GST registrations combined with the data analysis using other AI tools, government seems to be on track of seemingly upward collection of the taxes. Coming to Financial Express newspaper, so Finance Minister buoyant on the GST mop-ups. Yesterday also we had a look at this topic. So GST at 6, it completes 6 years. Some gains, more reforms are still needed to tap the complete potential of the law. So we are having that taxpayer base, it has widened and technology enabled anti-evasion steps, they have also helped us. However, it is still underperforming in both the pushing the tax revenue and economic growth. So the ratio between GST receipts to the GDP rose by just 40 basis points since the start. So it is increased merely by 0.4%. So we need to work at this front. So 17 taxes, they were subsumed in GST, and 13 cesses, they were also integrated into GST. So as per the net zero emissions by 2050 scenario of the International Energy Agency, electric cars will account for 60% of the new car sales by 2030. So in all, there will be an electric car fleet of over 300 million in the world in 2030. So definitely this sector is going to expand massively. So sodium ion batteries, they are said to be safer, cheaper and sustainable, and a viable alternative to the widely used lithium ion batteries. So you need to know more in detail about the benefits of sodium ion batteries over the lithium ion batteries and how they can play a game changer in India's push for the greater EV mobility. So here we are having the data as well. So another advantage is that sodium is abundantly and proportionately available across the globe. So its wide operating temperature range and low thermal runaway make it suitable for all weather conditions. So you can note them down. It's an important topic. And this will also drastically reduce the cost of battery technology and remove the need for environmentally harmful lithium mining operations. But still, we are in development stages as far as the sodium-ion batteries are concerned. So the sector is expanding gradually and gaining momentum. So you can find out about the basic things, although like we have taken up whatever is mentioned in this article, you can find a little more about it to have more clarity. Moving forward. So ditch that plastic. So biodegradable and compostable materials like plant-based plastics derived from corn or sugarcane, they offer a sustainable alternative to conventional plastic. And these materials, obviously, they're biodegradable, so they break down naturally over time, reducing their environmental impact. So the materials like green waste, food waste, paper waste, they can be considered as good examples of biodegradable and compostable materials. Here we're having an example of the grape waste. So grape waste, such as the grape skins, the seeds, stems, they can be utilized in various ways as an alternative to plastics. This waste, it can be processed to extract natural compounds like polyphenols and cellulose, which are the potential applications in developing biodegradable packaging materials. Then milk protein, natural fibers, bioplastics. These are all examples. And how we can basically, like all of these, they offer a sustainable alternative to conventional plastic. So 3rd July is celebrated as the International Plastic Bag Free Day. That is obviously to fight against the plastic pollution. So in your answers, obviously, you can cite these as the sustainable alternatives to plastics. So different varieties of mangoes have been explained here: Bombay Green, Himsagar, Kishanbhog, Dasheri, Alfonso, Kesar, and Langram. So you can just go through them. You can just find out from which all areas do we get these different varieties of mangoes. That's important. So here in Indian Express newspaper, I think we should directly move on to the editorial section. So divine destination Uttarakhand, charting a transformative path for a sustainable future. So this is Manskand circuit. So it is the Uttarakhand's Kumaon region will further strengthen the economy. So areas included in the circuit is Almora, which is nestled amidst the scenic hills of Uttarakhand. It holds a significant place in the Manskand circuit. So pilgrims, they can immerse themselves in this divine aura of temples like Jageshwar Mahadev temple, Chittai Golu Devta temple. So all of these temples are found, and each temple carries a district charm and architectural brilliance. In Pithoragarh, it is known for its picturesque landscapes. Then Bageshwar, it is revered the Bhagnath Mahadev temple and the Bajnath temple, they stand as timeless testaments to the devotion and the architectural prowess of the ancient times. Then Champawat, Nainital, Udham Singh Nagar, so you can read about their importance. Then obviously tourism is one of the key industries. Discover the hidden gems, unveiling the charm of lesser known destinations in Uttarakhand. So you can just go through this and find out about their importance. So mission to combat the sickle cell anemia is important. You can find about its basic details. So here you can see Prime Minister has also launched a program which honored Rani Durgavati, the ruling queen of Gondwana in the mid-16th century, and said that the biggest beneficiaries of the two major efforts are the people of Gond, Hill, and other Adivasi societies. So this mission was launched in Madhya Pradesh by the Prime Minister. So the phase 2 of the art project in the new parliamentary building, it focuses on the Indian traditions and the freedom movement. So here you can see the Samudra Manthan mural adorns the Lok Sabha wall in the central floor of the new parliament building. And around like 5,000 artworks they've been installed in the new building. Just over a month into its inauguration, plans are already afoot for the next phase of the art project, which is going to focus on freedom movement and the Indian traditions. So the first floor, it will also have two galleries. So one on the role of women in the nation's development. Another would be focusing upon one showcasing the role of the tribal leaders in the freedom movement. So we need to be best prepared with these two topics. And Rajya Sabha for it, they will have two galleries on upper ground floor. It will be on India's knowledge and the Bhakti traditions, and two on the first floor on the Indian connection with the nature and the traditional sports. And other walls of the building, they will be decorated with shlokas and other sacred symbols. So Lucid takes off European-built space telescope Lucid, designed to explore the dark universe, which is a cosmic phenomena. Scientists say it accounts for 95% of the known universe. So it takes off with SpaceX rocket from the Cape Canaveral Space Force Station, a month-long journey to the solar orbit. So the new abnormal, the scientists they say that climate change worsens the wildfires. So wildfires, they consume 3 times more of US, Canada each year than in 1980s. And studies, they predict that they're going to worsen further. So this is a picture, you can see hazy atmosphere, the hazy air, which is visible in New York from observatory in the Empire State Building on 7th of June. So situation is very critical. You've talked about GST. India's online retail sector may touch $325 billion by 2030. So the market size is rising mainly due to the rapid growth of e-commerce in Tier 2 and Tier 3 cities, as per a report. So harnessing the power of technology, sustainability, and forward-thinking strategies. Retailers, they can create an ecosystem that sets new benchmarks of value, engagement, and unforgettable shopping experiences. So why RBI penalized the credit information companies and what the borrowers they should do now? So RBI this week, it slapped a total penalty of rupees 1 crore on 4 credit information companies for their failure to update the credit information of the borrowers, which leads to big problems for the bank customers while applying for the banking services like loans and credit cards. So RBI, it has imposed penalty on this failure. What are the complaints of the customers? So RBI received many complaints from customers about these companies not updating the status of the borrowers. And many customers, they had complained that when they rectify a default issue or point out a wrong classification, CICs, they fail to act within the stipulated time frame. So if suppose a credit card holder defaults on a credit card or a loan installments, it's immediately notified to the CICs. However, CICs, they have failed to reclassify them when they rectified the payments. So there is time delay in this rectification. So RBI said is these companies, they had neither updated the credit information relating to them nor informed them regarding the steps taken by it for the correction of the discrepancies. So what are credit information bureaus? So they maintain the credit information of the borrowers like individuals, corporates, SMEs, which can be accessed by banks and other lending institutions. So they collect information from a variety of credit providers, including banks, credit card companies, and non-bank financial institutions. So this basically helps the banks in taking better decisions when it comes to lending a loan to such entities. So that's all for today. Thank you so much for joining us in today's analysis session. And also subscribe to the channel and do hit the like button.